to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into Soccer Morning on WorldSoccerTalk.com. We cover the world of soccer and we talk about it. That's how that works. We are live. We're on the air. It is ready. It is go time. I was going to say we're ready to go, but it's also go time. And yeah, lots to cover today. Ross Dunbar, our friend who covers German football, will join us in the next segment. Go over some of the news out of Germany, including the word that Pep Guardiola is going to clear things up for us come next week. We're going to get word of what Pep's plans might be. It seems as though every time Pep Guardiola's contract comes up, the world hangs on his decision. Will he end up in the Premier League? I guess ultimately that's the question everybody wants to know. And clearly, a club with big aspirations like Manchester City seems like a natural landing place for a guy like Pep Guardiola. We will check with Ross to see if we have any hints of what Pep's plans might be, or in the meantime, certainly what he's trying to accomplish with Bayern Munich. And we'll check on the state of the Bundesliga as well, because lots of things happening over there. Bayern won yesterday, by the way. We'll talk Champions League matchups and everything else. Speaking of international soccer, we weren't, but I'm going to make it like that, like we were. U.S. Soccer has announced that the U.S. men's national team will start 2016 with friendlies against Iceland and Canada. This will come out of the January camp. Both games set for the StubHub Center in Carson, California. Iceland on January 31st, Canada on February 5th. Now, obviously, Iceland getting ready for the Euros next year. Iceland having qualified for that tournament, their first major tournament they've qualified. A very small island nation doing big things in the world of football. A lot to be jealous of when it comes to Iceland. And we probably won't see Aaron Johansson play in that game, but there's that connection between the United States and Iceland, and the fact that Aaron Johansson, born here, raised there, could have played for Iceland, chose the United States. It just reminds me, going back to the very first year of Soccer Morning. That was the first year of Soccer Morning, was it not, Trevor? When we had the president of the Iceland FA on this program, because he was a little angry that Aaron Johansson decided to play for the United States, or had the ability to play for the United States. I'm not even sure what his problem was. He was kind of an angry dude. Reports out of London say that the Chelsea board is discussing the future of Jose Mourinho as the team's manager. Rumors that Juande Ramos could be in line to replace Jose should he go. There will be a vote, or there has been a vote. I'm not really sure about the timing of this, but ultimately, regardless of what the vote is, the decision comes down to Roman Abramovich. He is ultimately going to decide whether or not Jose Mourinho will go. Chelsea, again, losing on Monday to Leicester City. The Premier League season has been a disaster for the Blues. They are in the Champions League, and they have PSG now in the round of 16. So there's still some hope on that front. But they're in 16th place in the Barclays Premier League. They have 15 points from 16 matches. It could not possibly be worse for a big club like Chelsea. Fox 26 in Houston has reported that the deal to sell the majority stake in the Houston Dynamo to Mexican businessman Gabriel Brenner is done. Brenner also acquires the controlling interest in the Houston Dash of the NWSL and the remaining 27 years on the BBVA Compass Stadium lease. That stadium, of course, a 30-year lease, 27 years left on it. Oscar de la Hoya, who had a 25% stake in the team, retains that stake. Of course, the boxing legend involved there as well. Here's a quote from Gabriel Brenner. I've been involved as a very proud minority owner for the last 8 years, and have always had a great admiration for Mr. Anschutz and the whole organization of AEG. But we feel the time has come for us to take the reins over here and give the team a little bit more of a family personality ownership than the corporate image that we had before. We're very excited about it. Very happy to be able to be now at the helm of the team. So we'll see what happens with the Houston Dynamo. This has long been a complaint of Dynamo fans. Now, within the AEG hierarchy, because of course AEG also owns the LA Galaxy, the Dynamo have always been second choice. They've always gotten the scraps. They haven't gotten the attention of the Anschutz organization, and now they have their own completely new, completely separate majority owner, and the era of multi-club ownership in Major League Soccer is officially done. We had the the Hunt Sports Group headed by Clark Hunt, teams in Columbus and FC Dallas. Columbus has been sold. One team for the Hunt Sports Group, one team for AEG. Houston Dynamo being shifted to Gabriel Brenner. Good news there. Brazilian striker Fred has been banned for 1 year by CONMEBOL after testing positive for a masking agent at last year's Copa America. The ban applies only to South American competition, which is why Fred is not prevented from playing for his club, Shakhtar Donetsk. This is obviously bad news for Brazil, who's had some problems there at that striker position. They have Hulk, they have Fred. He was the leading scorer in the Brazilian league a couple of years back. Obviously, one of their options. He does have, I think, he does have 6 caps. It's not a lot, but most of that comes from that Copa America tournament in Chile last year. And tonight, Abby Wambach will wrap up her legendary career as the U.S. women's national team takes on China at the Superdome in New Orleans. Wambach will retire as the greatest international goal scorer of all time. 184 goals in 254 matches for the United States women's national team heading into tonight. We'll see if she can add to that total. She's out there doing some press. She's obviously going to have a role to play in the future of American soccer, and she made some waves by going on Bill Simmons' podcast. What's that called? The BS podcast. And saying that if there was one, when asked if there was one thing that she would change to make the U.S. men's national team better, she said she would fire Jurgen Klinsmann. So no holding back from Abby Wambach. We'll hope that continues, regardless of whether or not she's a part of the U.S. women's national team on the field or not. All right, here we go. Stepping aside, coming back, Ross Dunbar to talk some German football. Yeah, you want to talk about Pep. We all want to talk about Pep. Let's talk about Pep. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, here we go. Back on Soccer Morning on a Wednesday. Let's talk to Ross Dunbar, covers German football for various outlets, including Fox Sports. Hi, Ross. How are you?
Yeah, very well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's an interesting time of the year over here in the States. Our season is over, but that doesn't mean that the intrigue stops. It certainly doesn't mean that there aren't things to talk about in Europe. We're to come to the Champions League. We'll certainly come to the state of the Bundesliga right now. But I think the big news in Germany is that Pep Guardiola is giving us. Is this almost like the trailer for the main event? He's announcing he's going to announce something.
Yeah. So after the match last night against Darmstadt in the German Cup, he said that next week he would announce whether he would stay or go. From what we can gather, I think discussions have already been happening for some time with Guardiola and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. Whenever his agent is ever quoted in the media, he always says, well, Pep's his own guy. He'll make his own decision whenever he wants. So it's very interesting to see what happens. And obviously today we've had reports from Marca, Spanish newspaper, that said that Guardiola will leave, and he's already said that he will leave, so that's very interesting. And Carlo Ancelotti is the man who's being touted as his replacement.
So we sure that this stint is over for him. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, but now he's just going to become this iterate manager who takes his bag of tricks and flits around Europe, taking on whatever challenge presents itself. Is that who Pep Guardiola is?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not really sure who it benefits the announcement happening now. I mean, I know that Bayern Munich will want to have a contingency plan in place, but I'm sure that can happen internally. But I mean, I don't see how it's a benefit to Pep Guardiola when the pressure's on him to win the Champions League. I mean, if Bayern Munich go crashing out of the last 16, then that's a stick that you can be beat with, or you said you were going to leave. Maybe your heart's not really in it anymore. I think that's my concern anyway for him. But yeah, I mean, I think the City rumour has always been there. It's always been kind of in the background. We've always heard that Guardiola still keeps in contact with Soriano, the chief executive of the City Football Group, and Thierry Bergstrand as well, the technical director, who he worked with at Barcelona. So, I mean, I think this move was always on the cards. But I think it's a disappointment that we're having to hear this midway through the season, and he's being forced into telling us now when he's still got potentially as big as 6 months at Bayern Munich. He's obviously been brought here to win the Champions League, and this is his probably the best team that he's had. It's probably the closest he's had to having his perfect side, and it's a bit of a disappointment that this is a bit of a sideshow almost.
Well, so I mean, if I missed it, I apologize. I'm obviously trying to keep up with some other stuff. What's the reason for the announcement to come now rather than waiting until the end of the season or putting it off? I mean, I'm sure he's asked constantly, but he's not the type of guy that I think would crumble under the pressure of making the announcement now. Why doesn't he just wait?
I think Guardiola would like to wait until March or April. I mean, I would imagine that Bayern Munich want to have a decision ASAP on who their manager is going to be next season. There's also suggestions that Guardiola thinks that there's a disconnect between his philosophy and the club's ethos. That was the line reported in Marca this morning, which I think we have to take probably with a pinch of salt, because sure, Marca obviously is a pro Real Madrid newspaper, so it would surprise me if there's a little bit of ruffling the feathers there going on. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see what happens. I mean, I think Ancelotti's an interesting suggestion. What would kind of alert me right away is that he doesn't speak German, and in Germany it's a very big thing that you have to speak German to be the manager of a football club. You look at a lot of the big clubs in Germany; they're not managed by foreigners, so. I wonder how he'll adapt to that, and I wonder how he'll adapt domestically, because Ancelotti's record domestically isn't as good as it is in the Champions League, of course.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, replacing Pep Guardiola is going to be very difficult for anybody, and especially at a club like Bayern Munich with all the politics involved. Pep came in and learned German, right? So what's to prevent another manager from doing that? The only problem, of course, is that Bayern Munich then, once again, especially if they go for Ancelotti, Ross, steps right back into that revolving door of the 5 or 6 elite managers in the world, and that is not necessarily, I don't know. I mean, I guess for Bayern Munich, it's the only situation that can work these days. You're not going to give the reins to somebody who's going to be around to run a project for 5 or 6 years. Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, when you look at a lot of the top clubs, they're all managed by guys who have managed 3 or 4 different elite clubs. Rafa Benitez, Ancelotti, Van Gaal, etc. I'm interested to see what the thought process behind behind Ancelotti is because Matthias Sammer, the sporting director, who's obviously the guy who calls the shots, was a very, very big admirer of this style of football that Guardiola had at Barcelona. And you look at the kind of development of German football, I think that has kind of correlated with that. You know, they tried to take what Spain did in the late noughties and turn it into their own style. I don't know where Ancelotti fits into that. Ancelotti, to me, doesn't really have a strict philosophy. He seems to be more of a man manager. I suppose when you've got a great team like Bayern Munich have right now and the squad of players, I suppose you can afford to do that. But, I mean, I think it does shout to me as being a very short-term decision like Van Gaal was in 2010.
Well, as you said, the goal is to win the Champions League. We'll come to that draw here in a moment. I do want to check on the league, the wider league itself. I mean, Bayern Munich expected to walk away with another Bundesliga title, especially considering the drop in form that Dortmund's had over the last couple of seasons, and really, you know, there's a hump that some of these other bigger clubs in Germany have yet to get over. And yet, you look at the standings, and it's not. I mean, you know, Bayern Munich said they've dropped a total of 4 points all year. Or maybe 5 points all year, but they still only have a 5-point lead over Borussia Dortmund at this point. How comfortable can they feel in the league as, again, they wait to start the round of 16 in the Champions League?
Yeah, I mean, I think people have this impression that Bayern Munich are having a bit of a cakewalk at the moment, but I mean, 5 points, it's not a massive gap, and, you know, we see in a lot of leagues in Europe, you know, all it takes is 1 or 2 games, and obviously Dortmund have to play Bayern at home in the next 6 months, and you know, you wouldn't write it off that Bayern would drop points at some point. The thing is, I think Bayern are quite reliant on players like Douglas Costa, Arjen Robben, Thiago, the real kind of 1v1 type players. And we saw in the last few games that without them, they're not as incisive, they're not as consistent as they usually are. I mean, they obviously lost at Mönchengladbach. They played against Ingolstadt on Saturday, and they really struggled. I mean, they really could have lost that game. It was 1 or 2-0, and Manuel Neuer had 2 or 3 excellent saves. And obviously they won 1-0 against Darmstadt last night, so they're kind of limping towards the winter break. But I mean, I think there is the impression that Bayern Munich, okay, they've got the biggest resources, so they are expected to win. But I think the longer that Borussia Dortmund are nip and tuck with them, then there's a chance that they might throw it away towards the end of the season.
But there's no reason to believe it's going to be more than Bayern and Dortmund down. You know, if there's any race at all, it's going to be those two sides. I mean, you know, Hertha's too far back at this point, and then it only gets worse from there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at Dortmund's league record this season, I think it's been quite underrated. I think they've been really consistent, and okay, they dropped points against Darmstadt and Hoffenheim, but if they were in the Premier League, if they were in Serie A, or if they were in La Liga, they would probably be top of the league. And I think that's one line that Dortmund have kept pushing through the media, is that, you know, if we were in any other league without Bayern Munich, we would be the number one team. So I think that's very interesting. And yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting. I mean, I think if it had gone to maybe 9 or 10 points, I think it probably would have been over. But now that it's 5, I think you have to say with 17 games to go, there is a title race, and I think that keeps it at least interesting for a while.
So we know the Premier League, the most visible league in the world, is coming up on the festive period, Ross, with all those games jammed into one little short time frame. Meanwhile, Germany's getting ready to go on their winter break because they just do things differently there. When does the break run this year, and what impact does this break have on this particular race in the Bundesliga?
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably has a benefit for Bayern Munich because, like I said, I mean, they have a pretty long list of injuries at the moment. So the winter break will go from next weekend until the 22nd of January, which is quite a lengthy winter break, actually, when you think about it. I mean, it's almost pretty much a month-long winter break. So, I mean, that will be great for Guardiola because he can bring back Arjen Robben, Douglas Costa, Bernat, Alaba, you know, all these guys who are struggling with injuries. So it's ideal for them. For Dortmund, I mean, I think it might have benefits for them as well because I get the feeling that there are still some areas of Thomas Tuchel's system and formation that aren't quite working yet. You know, defensively they're still very open, and I think that'll be something they want to rectify going into January. But I mean, what's really interesting about January and February is that you have a couple of really, really big games. Bayern Munich have to go to Leverkusen, for example. Borussia Dortmund have to go to Mönchengladbach. I mean, there are some huge games that could alter the title race already before we start thinking about Champions League.
All right, so the winter break coming up. Is there any sense at all that that there'll be some player movement? Some purchasing on the part of some teams looking to strengthen and maybe make a run at either a Champions League spot or certainly staying up in the Bundesliga this year, or sales out of the Champions League, names that have been bandied about as potentially leaving their sides.
Not a huge amount so far. I don't imagine that Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund will make a lot of moves in the transfer market in January. I think one of the suggestions was that Neven Subotic perhaps would go to Liverpool to reunite with Jurgen Klopp. That might be a potential storyline to keep an eye on. Apart from that, I think Mönchengladbach have said they want to really strengthen the team. I wonder how much the last few games have impacted on that. Obviously, they lost 5-0 at Bayer Leverkusen on Saturday. They lost in the German Cup last night, so maybe they want to try and strengthen their side. The other one that comes to mind is Stefan Kiesling. Stefan Kiesling, of course, is a pretty experienced Bundesliga striker. He's got 158 Bundesliga goals, so he's level with Mario Gomez in the all-time scorers charts. He came back into the team on Saturday against Mönchengladbach. He scored 2, and he partnered really, really well with Chicharito. And the suggestions perhaps that he might leave, I would imagine that it would be to another Bundesliga club. I don't think he'll be going outside of Germany. So that's pretty much all the main transfer talk at the moment.
All right, you mentioned Chicharito there. Let's talk about Leverkusen and Chicharito Hernandez. Obviously, they don't advance in the Champions League. A bit of disappointment there, but his form right now is off the charts. I imagine it's very easy for the snark to bubble up on Twitter, and there's a lot of talk about how many goals Chicharito has scored for Leverkusen versus what the forwards and strikers have done for Manchester United, of course, his former club. But just give me a sense of why it's working for Chicharito. He's an incredible poacher, but what is it about Leverkusen in Germany that's agreeing with him?
I think the main thing with Leverkusen is that they create a lot of chances. I mean, they play a style of football that is very gung-ho. It's all-out attacking, and obviously, as we've seen with Leverkusen in Europe, it's had its deficiencies. They've been caught out in the counter-attack. But when you've got Karim Bellarabi on the right-hand side, you've got Hakan Çalhanoğlu behind you, and you've got guys like Kevin Campbell in midfield, you're going to create a lot of chances. And I think when it comes to even like the expected goals metric, I think Leverkusen is one of the highest teams in the Bundesliga. And the sort of chances that Chicharito is getting, it's like cutbacks into the penalty box. It's from 6 or 7 yards out. So I mean that's exactly what Chicharito is looking for. And I think you look at how consistent his scoring has been. It's not just the fact that he's scored something like 16 goals in his last 13 games. It's just how consistent he's been. Scoring in the Bundesliga, scoring in the Champions League. He's obviously getting a great amount of service at the moment, and he's not having to. The thing is, he's not having to, do a lot of the donkey work, which I think Louis van Gaal would have probably demanded of him. I saw a great quote from Hernandez in the last few days that Van Gaal had told him that he had 1% chance of being in the team, so that's why he left. But I think Leverkusen is a great breeding ground for him because he'll get form, he'll play in Europe, and obviously he'll be playing in the Bundesliga against really solid defensive teams. And I'm sure the Mexican national team will be loving that. Yeah, absolutely.
They want to see Chicharito Hernandez in good form with good confidence. If he's playing regularly and he's getting those chances, he's going to put them away. And watching the Mexican national team, as I want to do around these parts, Ross, they suffer when they don't have a player like Chicharito Hernandez who can be counted on to put those chances away. And he went through some really bad times where he was missing easy chances, and you have to assume that's just because of lack of consistent playing time. He certainly needs that, and it's working out for him there at Bayer Leverkusen. Okay, so we talked about Chicharito Hernandez. We'll flip over to the best American player at the moment, and certainly the best American player in Germany, and that's Fabian Johnson at Mönchengladbach. You talked about whether or not they would want to strengthen. They've had this really weird run of results. They beat Bayern Munich 3-1, and certainly some back and forth as to whether or not they didn't control that entire game. Certainly Bayern Munich didn't put away their chances in the first half, and that aided them. But they beat Bayern Munich 3-1. Fabian Johnson playing well in that game, but then they lose to City. They get crushed by Leverkusen. They lose in the German Cup to Werder Bremen. Just give me a sense of where Gladbach is right now, and then obviously Fabian Johnson, his contributions.
Well, I think the transformation in that club over the last 6 or 7 weeks is really incredible. André Schubert, he went 10 league games unbeaten. He really kind of has re-energized this football club, and And they're back competing for the Champions League. I mean, I think Saturday's result against Bayer Leverkusen, they lost 5-0, and it was their first league defeat under Schubert. I mean, I kind of get the impression that you have to just take that with a pinch of salt. I mean, I think although Leverkusen were outstanding and they created a lot of chances, I think Gladbach just had a really bad day at the office. And I think when you have the kind of luck that they've had maybe against Bayern Munich, for example, you kind of expect that sort of thing to happen. I think they'll be disappointed to go out of the German Cup because I think they will have seen that as being an opportunity to win some silverware. And obviously, when you only have 2 or 3 trophies, silverware is very hard to come by. So yeah. I think they'll be really disappointed to go out to Werder Bremen last night. That'll be the one that I think really sticks in their throat a little bit. Now, with Fabian Johnson, he obviously missed the last 2 games with injury, yeah. But his form has been exceptional. I mean, he's really... I think he's really thrived under André Schubert. I think before we knew him as being just a kind of speedy, kind of wide player, but I think he's added a little bit more to his game. He's a little bit more confident in the ball. He's actually being involved in combination play, especially against Bayern Munich, for example. He was excellent both on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. They played a 3-4-3 formation against Bayern Munich, and Fabian Johnson had to surrender his left wing position. He almost played like an inside forward, which was certainly I haven't seen him play in that role before, but I thought he did really, really well. And obviously in the game against Hoffenheim, for example, he popped up with 2 goals, and it obviously shows that he's beginning to have a little bit more kind of self-confidence in these sort of situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question for U.S. men's national team observers is what's his best position? How is Schubert using him to great effect? Because some of the question with the national team, of course, is whether or not Jurgen Klinsmann is going to deploy him as a right back, which is a position of need for the United States, but not necessarily Johnson's best position on the field. You get more out of him. I certainly think you get more out of him if you're playing him higher up the field. But where higher up the field, and certainly what system is he most effective?
I mean, I think he probably is most effective on the left-hand side. I mean, I would find it really odd that, given how well he's doing in the Bundesliga and in the Champions League, that Jurgen Klinsmann would put him back at right fullback. I would find that a really strange decision. I mean, certainly on the left, what he gives you, I think, is on the counter-attack, he's really quick. I think his final ball has really improved. I think he chases back and helps. So, for example, at Mönchengladbach, you have Oscar Wendt at left back, and the two of them can interchange quite a lot. Wendt is a very attack-minded fullback, and Johnson can tuck in and allow him to bomb forward. So, tactically, he's a very good player. I spoke to someone in the mix zone after the Bayern Munich game at Borussia Park, and the German journalist described him as a system player. Now, again, this is probably just trying to take a German phrase and put it into English, but it's quite an interesting description, a system player. Maybe Johnson's biggest weakness is the fact that he's so versatile, because he's not getting that run of games in an area where he is so strong. But I mean, I must admit, I thought with the performance against Juventus in the Champions League, for example, the performance against Sevilla, and the performances against Bayern Munich, I think he looks like a sort of player who should be played in an attacking position. I would imagine that the US national team doesn't have a lot of options for attacking positions when you've got a guy like this playing so well in one of Europe's top leagues.
Yeah, no, certainly not. I mean, and again, it's a matter of whether or not Klinsmann wants to be proactive and give Fabian Johnson the run to be higher up the field to influence the game that way, or if he wants to be conservative, push, because there is a question of obviously defensive strength for the U.S. men's national team, particularly at those fullback positions, Ross. But that's a different discussion, perhaps for a different day. Let's talk about the Champions League again. Leverkusen out. Imagine that's a bit of a disappointment. Just before we get to Bayern Munich and their chances and the individual draw, what is the reaction to going to the Europa League for a club like Leverkusen?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine there was a sense of disappointment. I was at the game against Barcelona, and they completely dominated that game. They had 6 or 7 amazing chances in and around the penalty box, but they just seemed to panic, and you almost got the impression with about 15-20 minutes to go that this just wasn't going to happen for Bayer Leverkusen. I mean, they've performed well in the Champions League, but I mean, there are still massive question marks over how good they actually are, and I get the feeling that if they got into the last 16, they would have probably got smashed by somebody anyway. So I think probably going into the Europa League is a good thing. However, Sporting Lisbon is not a great draw for them. I don't think a lot of the German teams have had good draws in the Europa League, so I think Leverkusen will be disappointed.
You also so we have obviously Bayern Munich drawing Juventus. We'll come to that here in a second. But I think that it's interesting. Ghent out of Belgium makes it into the last 16 of the Champions League, which is obviously a massive deal for them. Then they draw Wolfsburg, and this is no slight against Wolfsburg, but if you're Ghent, you have to be excited that you're not getting a Real Madrid or Barcelona. I mean, that's a great game to have. It's a showcase game. But if you have any chance at all at the quarterfinals, grabbing somebody like Wolfsburg, and so from Wolfsburg's perspective, they also have to be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I thought one of the great things was that, during the draw on TV, they panned to the directors of Wolfsburg and the sporting director, and they were probably one of the only groups of representatives who were actually looked very happy. I mean, Carlos Allos before the draw had said that he had almost kind of hinted that Ghent was the kind of draw they were looking for. He said that there were draws that would be favourable to them, and he obviously was delighted, and I can understand why. I mean, for Wolfsburg, I mean, to me anyway, I mean, without wanting to talk Ghent down at all, I mean, I think that's a passage for Wolfsburg into the quarterfinals, so they must be delighted with that. I mean, I don't know how they would have fared against one of the better teams, but again, that's the advantage of finishing first in your group, is that you get maybe a little bit easier draws in the second knockout phase.
Yeah, certainly, and Wolfsburg winning that group, that's not something you necessarily would have picked ahead of the group stage. I mean, whether or not Manchester United is their old selves, you don't expect them to finish third, and PSV surprised.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the one thing about Wolfsburg was that there was a sense of uncertainty about them this season after losing Kevin De Bruyne, and I mean, I still don't think they're as good without him, but they are a very different German team to Bayern Munich and Leverkusen and Gladbach, because they're very possession-based. I mean, what Dieter Hecking has done, he's brought in Julian Draxler from Schalke. He's got a guy from Gladbach, Max Kruse, of course, and they're very, very good at keeping the ball, and I think that's something that will benefit them in the Champions League. And I said this with the group stages, I thought that they would do well in the group stages because they are a very possession-based team, and I think that's very hard to come by nowadays, certainly in German football.
All right, but we come to Bayern Munich, and they draw the defending finalist Juventus. And obviously Juve started poorly in Serie A. They've kind of gotten their legs. They're certainly not a club that you can look past by any stretch of the imagination. From a Bayern Munich perspective, this draw, Ross, and then obviously their fortunes or their possibilities of going and winning this title, especially with all of this Pep Guardiola speculation hanging over their heads, and then by the time we get to the groups to the knockout rounds, they'll have known there'll be some conclusion as to whether Pep is leaving, and then I think that provides more pressure if he is leaving for them to finish this thing out with the Champions League title. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, obviously when we talked about it earlier, that's what I said. I think announcing this 6 months earlier before you've got to play Champions League matches, I think is quite interesting, because it could be used to hit them if things don't go according to plan. I mean, I would think that Bayern Munich should get through this draw. I mean, they played Juventus I think 2 years ago in the last 16, and they came through quite comfortably. So I mean, I would put my money on Bayern Munich. I mean, I think they're relieved that they didn't get Paris Saint-Germain. I think that would have been the big test if they had got PSG. So I mean, Juventus is a great club, and they've got some great players, but I would imagine that Bayern Munich would go through. And obviously, if they didn't go through, I think it'd be a bit of a disaster for Bayern to go out at the last 16 stage.
Well, and look, I mean, obviously, Juve changed a lot from last year's team. I mean, Pirlo's gone. The numerous numerous players who just are out of my head at the moment are gone. Pogba's still there, but they have changed a lot, and they've certainly changed experience-wise. So Bayern Munich with a wealth of Champions League experience, I would expect to have a major advantage there. I got one more question for you, Ross, before I let you go. Our friend Robert in LA wants to know what your thoughts are on the German teams, what they do during the winter break, or what's the general feeling about German teams and their approach to the winter break? Because I know some of them do take tours, go abroad, and whether or not that's is that beneficial for them? And I don't know if any are coming here to the U.S., but it seems that Robert's intimating that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Leverkusen are one of the clubs going to Florida, I think.
Okay.
Maybe I'm missing something there, but I'm pretty sure that Leverkusen are playing a few South American teams in Florida this year. I don't know if you know anything about that or not.
I think you're right. I think they may be part of some Orlando City's part of something, and I think Leverkusen may be involved in that. I'm not. I don't pay attention. Here we go. Yeah, Corinthians, Fluminense, Bayer Leverkusen, and Cologne. That's last year. That's last year. My fault.
Oh,
but they may be involved again this year. So I'm just trying to do a little bit of a little research here. But it's going to be okay. So it's coming up. It's coming in January. It seems that Leverkusen is definitely involved.
Okay, so Borussia Dortmund will be going to Qatar to have a winter training camp. Bayern Munich again are going to the Middle East, and again this is like another topic of interest. Kind of if you're interested in sports politics, is that Bayern Munich, of course, last year went to Saudi Arabia and played uh, a friendly in Saudi Arabia when obviously, I mean, I'm not an expert in these sort of situations, but I think there were instances of human rights violations, etc., etc., and I think that's still happening, and yet Bayern Munich are going to play in the Gulf again. So that's a very interesting thing to keep an eye on. They're only there for 5 or 6 days in the Middle East before they're back in Germany. There was some deliberation as to whether they would go to the Middle East or not, and obviously they're going there for a week's training camp. I mean, I think it's a very important thing for them going into the Champions League because certainly with Guardiola and Tuchel, they're very hands-on coaches, and when they can get 3 or 4 weeks to work with the players, I think it will be a massive benefit to the team going forward. And it'll be interesting to see again how Germany's results in Europe in both the Champions League and the Europa League compare with the English results, because obviously there are a lot of big teams in the Europa League: Manchester United, Liverpool, Tottenham. It'll be interesting to see how they fare without a winter break.
Yeah, I'm looking at this is the Florida Cup 2016. They got a very fancy website. Corinthians, Fluminense, Atletico Mineiro, Internacional, so a bunch of Brazilian sides, and then Leverkusen, Schalke. Those are the 2 German sides taking part. And then there's some other teams, including Santa Fe of Colombia and Shakhtar Donetsk. So if you're interested in some German soccer, maybe you could go down to Florida and catch this winter tournament. Ross Dunbar joining us on Soccer Morning. Follow him on Twitter at Ross Dunbar93, covering German football and doing a fantastic job. Ross, appreciate the time. Good chat. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, guys. Have a good Christmas. Have a good New Year.
There goes Ross. Absolutely. Thanks. Happy holidays, Ross, and have a good New Year and all of that good stuff as the Germans go into hibernation, sort of. And then they play tournaments. Soccer Morning. We'll come back. We'll take your phone calls. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
I'll read the book you like, I'll read that stupid poem. I read between the ink, you'll always never know. can't get enough of myself.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, here we go. Soccer Morning. Phone lines open at 646-832-3909. If you don't call, then I'm forced to talk to myself for the next, 15 or 20 minutes or so. And nobody wants that. Everybody wants to have a good discussion here on Soccer Morning. We got a lot to discuss. We just got done talking about German football. We've got Abby Wambach's last game tonight. Abby Wambach is retiring after 184 goals in 254 matches. She has been a legend for a long time, and now she is finally wrapping up her career. She's going out as part of the women's national team tour. They're in New Orleans tonight. They're playing in the Superdome. That means turf again, but hey, whatever. They're playing China. And hopefully while Abby gets a good run out, maybe she even gets a goal. Make that a nice 185. Go ahead and tack on one more, Abby. I mean, the place, I don't know how many tickets they sold, but the place would go nuts. The place would go nuts. And certainly, whatever you think of Abby Wambach and whatever you think of her influence on the national team, she's been extremely important to the United States for a long time. So, thanks, Abby. Hashtag, thanks, Abby. Let's continue to roll that out. Give me your favorite Abby Wambach moment. I mean, I think mine is probably scoring against Brazil in the 2011 World Cup in Germany. When did that goal happen? I mean, it was insanely late. I think they were into... Oh, it was so late. Fantastic stuff. That call from here... Let me see if I can do this on the fly. Let me see if I can find this on the fly, because this is one of the... In addition to the 2010 goal against Algeria and the call from Ian Dark there, we got the next year, we got an Ian Dark call on Abby Wambach scoring late against Brazil. And just adding to the lore of Abby Wambach in that game. 122nd minute. 122nd minute. She scored that goal.
This one down.
So we've got, we'll just delete bring this back. So the United States is down 2-1. I mean, just let's memories here. Memories of Abby Wambach. The United States is down 2-1. In the 122nd minute, looks like they're going out of the tournament. Looks like it's not happening for the United States in 2011. Now, we know they ultimately didn't win the World Cup that year, but they made a good run at it. And it would have been a disappointment to crash out to Brazil at that stage of the tournament, certainly. Here we go. Let's listen.
Seconds. Now, USA have it. And they've just got to get everybody forward now. No sense defending anymore. Lloyd's got to get this pass off to Rapinoe, and everybody's got to bomb forward now. Rapinoe gets a crossing. It's towards Wambach. Oh, can you believe this? Abby Wambach has saved the USA's life in this World Cup.
Yeah, I got goosebumps. I get goosebumps. It's Ian Dark, but it's that moment. It's the crowd. It's Abby Wambach rising majestically at the back post. And that's the indelible image of Abby Wambach. And again, there's some controversy around Abby Wambach. There's some controversy around how she put herself out there, how she certainly was an influence behind the scenes with the women's national team. And look, Bo Dur, who's been following and covering women's soccer for a long time, talking about Homari Sawa from Japan, quietly retired today as well. Quietly. Different culture, different situation. We're going to celebrate Abby. We're going to have a thanks Abby hashtag rolling. We're going to have memories of Abby. It's obviously been the Abby tour since she announced that she was retiring after that White House visit. And again, the timing of the announcement even got people a little riled up. Even Abby Wambach saying, I'm going to retire after that moment when the U.S. women's national team was visiting the White House in recognition of their World Cup title, even that became controversial because that's who Abby Wambach is. And you know what? Again, some things she did, some things she put out there, certainly her defense of the Magic Jack FC, Boris, what's his name? Boris, I want to forget that guy's name. But the owner of Magic Jack FC, the late owner of Magic Jack FC, her continued defense of him, of that team, of the situation there, a guy who, made a lot of enemies, but at the same time was very good to his national team stars. She would create controversy there. She created controversy in how she handled the turf situation. She created controversy. I mean, it goes back a long time. But it's clearly, I mean, there's absolutely no question at all that she's one of the greatest women's soccer players of all time. Probably one of the greatest goal scorers in the history of the game, period, men, women, whoever. Christine Sinclair, 30 goals back of Abby Wambach. Robert in L.A. asking if I think Sinclair will catch Abby Wambach. I mean, I don't know how long Christine Sinclair's got left. I don't know what her plan is. I mean, she could keep going with the number of games Canada's going to play. She's 32. She's got a chance at it. She's got a chance at the record. 158 goals right now for Christine Sinclair. At least that's what Wikipedia says. If I'm wrong on that, we'll check. Also, right now, and by the way, taking phone call 646-832-3909. We'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to put this out there. There is a story over at the New York Times, as written by Sam Borden and James Montague, two of my favorite soccer people, by the way, two great soccer writers. Sam Borden's been on top of the FIFA corruption scandal. He was there in the hotel when the original raid happened. And James Montague is just a fantastic writer. The guy who did 31-0 has been around the world documenting the minnows of soccer for a very long time. They've got a joint story out. There's a new website that's popped up, a mysterious website that's popped up called Football Leaks that is putting out some pretty incredible financial information behind the scenes. We'll get to Luke in Seattle on the phones here in a second, but let me just read the lead here from this story at the New York Times. The press officer for FC Twente, a professional soccer club in the Netherlands, received a phone call one morning last month while driving to work. A colleague had just seen a strange post on Twitter. This was no ordinary social media crisis for a sports team. Rather, Twente, based in Enschede, and I'm probably butchering that, but there you go, had become the largest target of a group that had suddenly disrupted professional soccer around the world with tactics that are reminiscent of WikiLeaks. The group has published private documents related to soccer clubs in Portugal, England, Spain, France, Luxembourg, and Monaco, among others. In the case of Twente, the website known as Football Leaks had published documents showing financial agreements between the team and an agency with a variety of soccer interests, including a controversial player investment business. The documents, which were never meant to be released publicly, appeared to portray a relationship that was at best unsavory and at worst in violation of national and international soccer regulations. This is bombshell stuff, people. Luke in Seattle, you're on the air.
Hey, I was calling up about Timbers.
All right. Yeah. They're the champions.
I feel like they're. Yeah. Congrats to them. Sincerely, congrats to them. That being said, though, has one team that won the MLS Cup spent so much time thinking about any other team in the league? I don't remember the Galaxy trying to go like F New York or our grass is better than New York's grass or let's see what was Merritt Paulson doing with Bohm yesterday? Something about the team up north is the one that's all overaged and is out of TAM money and everything else.
I don't look.
I mean, I'm going to be 100% sincere. I'm actually flattered that they think about us that much because if we end up winning the MLS Cup, and we will, I'm not going to think about it at all.
Okay, fair.
Whatsoever.
Fair. Okay. It's a unique situation. I mean, yeah, you could make the argument that Portland constantly referencing Seattle after they win an MLS Cup just goes to show you that they have an inferiority complex when it comes to Seattle. I'm not from Portland. I'm not a Timbers fan. I'm not going to speak for them. It does appear that way on some level, but at the same time, there's not. I'm not going to begrudge a rival for wanting to take a dig at a rival, and whether or not Seattle fans or the Seattle team or the Sounders organization would take shots at Portland should they win an MLS Cup. I don't know. Maybe maybe not. I mean, maybe they do have a nose in the air. We're better than that attitude about it. I don't know. I actually think it makes the league more interesting, so I have no problem with it from that perspective, Luke. But yeah, the Timbers probably could stand to stop talking about Seattle a little bit.
Oh, I just feel like even some of the burns that they're trying to do are like really cheap, lazy, and I'm like, cliche.
Well, they have it. They have the trophy. The burn. Come on, Luke. The burn.
Congratulations.
The burn is look at my trophy. Do you want to touch my trophy? No, you can't touch my trophy. It's my trophy. Look at my trophy. That's the burn, Luke.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, look, I mean, here's the thing, and now I'm going to this is circular and meta, and I apologize. But the fact that you're calling up Soccer Morning to talk about the Timbers, talking about the Sounders, kind of shows that the Sounder fans are thinking about the Timbers fans talking about the Sounders, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, and around the cul-de-sac we go.
There we go.
Yeah, no, I was saying, if nothing else, I look forward to kicking their ass again next year.
There you go.
So,
Love it. Love it. But before you go, Luke, since this did happen yesterday, I didn't report it in the news, but not because it's not important, but because it just didn't make the cut. Marco Papa being traded to the Rapids. Any thoughts on that?
I am sincerely bummed about it, but I feel like this offseason for the Sounders has been just weird in general. It was unfortunate the way we got knocked out of the playoffs. If we could have defended 3 more minutes, who knows what would have happened. Ratings would have been massive with the Sounders versus the Timbers, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it would have been fun.
But then we ended up having the season ticket holders meeting, and Joe Ross said stuff he said about Marco Papa's country. And
yeah, you kind of had to ship him out then, huh? I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can't. How do you hold on to Marco Papa when you got Joe Roth saying things about Guatemalans that are just not cool? I mean, just not.
I
cool.
I was sitting next to one of my friends, and when he ended up saying that, and I looked at him and I was like, "Well, Marco Papa's probably gone now." I mean, what do you do now? Call him up and go, "Please, forgive me, like immediately after the fact.
Yeah.
And he has no idea what's going on. So you got to explain it to him, and it's just.
And it's also true that Joe has taken a more of a backseat role with the organization as well. I mean, I'm sure he's got some skin in the game still, but it seems as though Adrian Hanauer's taken over more of the. I mean, he was always going to lead the club, but he's maybe the shares.
I don't feel like a whole lot has changed, though. I feel like it's mostly just paperwork.
Yeah.
I would say Adrian was already driving the ship to begin with. Joe Roth was more the person that was casting vision, and if Clint Dempsey became available, he's like, go get him. Money's not an issue.
Yeah.
And so you had stuff like that. But now I would say it was all fun and hunky-dory the first 6 years. And I feel like for various reasons this offseason, the first year, that there's sort of a tension between ownership and fans. And we'd really like them to go out and get a championship and everything else. And you got Garth Lagerwey going, well, you know, we're probably not going to make any transactions this offseason. Oh, great, we got CAM money. Well, actually, we don't really have CAM money. All of it's already spent.
Right.
So,
yeah.
You know. So,
that's not good. We'll see.
Yeah,
I mean, the Timbers will be in contention. They're certainly going to be in the playoff mix. I have no doubt about the Sounders. Excuse me, Luke. That's just because they won the championship. I apologize. The Sounders will be there among the best in the West. I have no doubt about it. Luke, I got to run. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
Appreciate it, man. All right, there you go. Yeah, don't Sounders fans quit worrying about Timbers fans talking about the Sounders, and Timbers fans stop talking about the Sounders and enjoy your championship. Let's just, again, it separates you guys. You go to this room. You go, Bill. You're in New York. You're on the air.
How's it going, Jason? Once again, your call has got me going off in a different direction. Them talking about the Seattle-Portland thing reminded me of years ago when the New England Patriots won the Super Bowl and they had a parade, and during their parade celebration, they started chanting "Yankees suck."
Yeah, that's that Boston thing. I'm a sort of hanging on to casual Red Sox fans these days. Used to be way more into it, Bill, but I never. Yeah, I know. It's always about the damn Yankees. I know.
And that's what it is. Seems like with Seattle and Portland.
Yeah.
I was calling about with some transfer moves going on, and I was just thinking about how the Red Bulls really haven't done anything now. But people have mentioned in the past about changing our schedule and how that would help with transferring of players.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Well,
why is that? Why would it help?
Okay, well, think about what happened with NYCFC or any of these teams. Steven Gerrard coming over in the middle of the season. These guys were, they come off a long European season. Then they get a couple of weeks or a month off, and then they have to start playing again. And their transfers come in the middle of the MLS season. So now the team has to adjust to the sudden arrival of Andrea Pirlo and Frank Lampard, in LA's case, Steven Gerrard, and a couple other players. I mean, adding players during the year is a part of the process. And even in Europe, you have the January window, you can do that. But to have it be such large players, such fundamentally transformative players, makes a difference. So, and then if you flip it around, Bill, it's also about the opportunity for MLS players to be sold abroad. Teams are looking for help in the offseason, not in January necessarily. They don't want to go out and spend a bunch of money. There's a premium for buying a player in January that you don't have to pay in the summer. So it would help young American players who might have European interest get their shot, because teams are more likely to buy them in the summer than to buy them in the winter. And then the MLS player isn't in the middle of his season and doesn't have to make a decision about leaving his club. The club doesn't have to make a decision about getting rid of a player who's crucial to a playoff run. That's why.
But I always say there's two windows, and one's in the beginning and one's in the middle.
Yeah, but again,
whichever way you're looking at it, whether you're looking at it from an English point of view or whether an American point of view, one's in the middle of the season and one's at the start of the season.
But because there's only one Scandinavian leagues, some South American leagues, because there are so few leagues that operate on the MLS style schedule, and most of the moves are being made by clubs that operate on the other European style schedule, it just means that it's more difficult to get deals done, because again, the MLS players in the middle of their season come January, come summertime. While the European players are in the middle of their season come the MLS offseason. So if MLS teams want to go out and sign a European player, well, now we have to account for the fact that they're in the middle of their season over there. And now, are we going to try to get them out early? Are they going to wait until the summer to join us? How does that impact our salary budget? I mean, it just makes it more complicated. I'm not saying MLS should change, Bill. I'm just saying it makes it more complicated.
Because I'm always thinking, too, that, like, the January window, I would think our players, if they're playing up to level the season before, that's like a good time for an English team to pick up one of our players. They have a push for the final 6 months, and now they have a player coming in from MLS who's fresh.
Well, maybe
who's ready to go.
Yeah, maybe, but at the same time, players have rhythms, and if you take an MLS player who goes into their offseason come November or December and is sort of shutting it down, maybe they're keeping up a baseline of fitness, but they're shutting it down. They're not touching a ball nearly as much. And then you bring them in January, yeah, they might have fresh legs, but they're also going to have a poor first touch, or their reading of the game is going to be slower because they haven't gotten back into the full swing of things. I mean, some players may be able to do it, but that's exactly what we're seeing with these name players coming over in the summer, Bill. A guy like Andrea Pirlo, a guy like Frank Lampard comes in the middle of the summer after they've shut it down for a while, and they're asked to turn it back on and perform in a physical, fast league, and they're having trouble. And the reason they're having trouble, not just because they're 36 years old, but because they're out of rhythm.
Yeah, to me, I always see that as these guys come over here, they don't take this league serious.
I don't think that's what it is.
I think they come over.
I
know it's not from all the players, but I think a lot of the players, when they first get here, they think that they're going to come here and they're going to walk.
Well, sure, but
they realize.
But Bill, that's compounded by the fact that they are in their they're in the middle of what is traditionally their off season, unless they're playing for their national team, and even then, it's a different kind of schedule. I mean, I'm just saying, like you take a guy like Lampard or Pirlo, who are in their mid to late 30s. You're not only are you asking them to turn the engines back on in a time of the year where they typically are turned off, but you're also asking them to adjust to the league. I think maybe a part of it is they're not taking it seriously, but a part of it is that they're just not used to having to do that in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, and I just bring it up because I always hear people telling us about changing our schedule, and it makes no sense to me. And like I should talk to Trevor about this because I know he's the one.
Oh yeah, he's big on this. Yeah, he's sending me all kinds of messages right now, Bill. He's making all kinds of arguments for the switch right now.
I know, and I don't get it because first of all, our off season is so short now. That's barely even an off season anymore. So you barely have any time off. So it's only 2 months that it's an off season. And to take those 2 months and make those 2 months now, July and August, the best months to be in the United States, the best weather, the best of everything, the best time to go watch soccer, and to take those 2 months away now and say, those are our off season. To me, I think the rest of the world has got to get on board with us.
All right, Bill.
I mean, in England, you're playing in awful weather in the middle of the winter. Why are you not playing in the summertime when it's beautiful in England? It makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, the sports they establish their seasons through tradition. I mean, the NFL and American football plays through the fall and the winter because that's just when we did it. I mean, when it started, it wasn't ever. I don't think it was ever a conscious decision. They could play. I mean, it would suck to have to wear the pads now, but back when that game started, nobody was wearing that much padding, and they were still playing in the winter. They chose to play in the winter. Again, this I don't think that you can use logic necessarily. I mean, I think that NMLS HQ decision might be based on logic. Yeah, we can't give up our summer months when the kids are out of school. There's families available, and the weather is relatively nice versus the winter time when we don't have any of those advantages. I'm sure that's what's happening now, but in terms of why Europe plays the schedule they do, history. I mean, history. That's just what it is.
And that's what kills me about Europe is that how they can't tweak anything. You can't tweak soccer. It's perfect. You can't tweak it at all. And it's one of the things I love about American sports is that we're always tweaking our sports. Baseball. How could you touch baseball? But we're always tweaking it. We're tweaking football. We're tweaking everything here. And I think England has to start to think maybe we can change a little bit. It's not the most perfect sport in the world. There are things we can change. And I think one of the things might be the schedule.
Yeah. All right, Bill. Appreciate the call, man. It's interesting. It's an interesting discussion, regardless of what side you're on. There are lots of pros for switching. There are a lot of cons for switching. It is what it is. Eddie in Brooklyn, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? Hey, why is everybody saying that Chelsea's in a crisis?
Because they have 15 points?
Yeah, I know, but they're only like 6 points out of a playoff spot. I'm pretty sure they could make up those points and then make a deep run in the playoffs, win the championship, and then everybody will clearly say they were the best team all season, right?
I walked myself right into that. All right, Eddie, you made your point. Go ahead.
All right, no, so I was having kind of a drunken conversation with a couple of buddies of mine trying to figure out like who's the best player in CONCACAF, because I remember we talked about this before the World Cup, and maybe I was drunk then, and I kind of hope not because it was 9 in the morning, but I mistakenly said Michael Bradley, which there's no way in hell that could ever be the answer now.
Well, not now, but these things change, right?
No. Yeah, but even back then, I was probably like
whatever,
really
man. Whatever. You just you don't want to give any love to the Americans. I understand how it is.
Well, I mean, Celso Borges completely outperformed him in the World Cup, but that's neither here nor there. No, so I'm trying to figure out now who is the best player in the region, and we didn't come on. We kind of came to a consensus, but it doesn't count. Because I think the answer is Keylor Navas, but the goalkeepers don't count.
Well, I mean, they should count, but we never do, right? And typically, I mean, as you're asking the question, I'm thinking, okay, where am I going to go with this? And your brain automatically goes to the forward part of the field, right? I mean, guys who score goals, guys who create chances, those guys get the headlines. Those guys get named best player. Although I think maybe we do have a situation now in CONCACAF where the best players are deeper lying in the midfield, probably.
Yeah, because I know Chicharito would immediately come up if you kind of go by that criteria, which is why I wouldn't use that criteria, because it's really not just a goal thing. It's just putting the ball in the back of the net, and that's all you do. I get it. Games are about goals, but maybe because I'm a coach and I kind of view the game differently, there's a lot that goes leading up to that goal to get that player in that position. Mm-hmm. And when I think of like just the entire field from the goalkeeper on, I can't really think of a legit answer. Like I heard Hector Herrera was one of the names that was thrown out there. Somebody made a case on Andres Guardado, but it's like we couldn't really come to a general consensus. So I don't know if maybe you had it or
no. I mean,
maybe Serious XM show. If you could throw it out, like who is the best player in the region?
Well, I think that you've got the conversation, and there not being a consensus is the evidence that the region right now is kind of not suffering, but we don't have one guy who's clearly playing above everybody else, and that makes it difficult. Hector Herrera is a good player. Is he on that level right now that he's the best player in I mean, I haven't seen it with Mexico, but he's obviously playing well with Porto. I mean, how do you balance that stuff out too? You got to consider Well, are they playing well with their national team? Yes, no, maybe. Are they playing well with the club side? Yes, no, maybe. These are different circumstances. And you take a player, and you know this, Eddie, you take a player and put him in a difficult circumstance or out of position or in a system that doesn't necessarily work for his skill set, and suddenly the player who looked great for one team looks pedestrian and mediocre for another team. So I think that's probably where we're at right now is as these national teams go through transitional periods, it's difficult to identify the best player in the region because we want to consider both sides of that, right? The club side and the international side.
Agreed. I mean, before the World Cup, I also said that eventually I thought it would be Joel Campbell.
Yeah.
All he ever really needed was a chance. I think he's finally getting that chance, and I think he's finally showing people that he is an Arsenal-type player. I never understood that this notion that he wasn't good enough to play for Arsenal. Like Arsenal had standards all of a sudden. Like they've won 2 FA Cups in the last decade, no league titles. They're around the 16 exit on a year in and year out basis. I don't understand how they necessarily have a level. But I think now that you see him getting his opportunities and he's making the most of them, that he'll eventually. I still believe he'll eventually get to where I thought he would be.
Mm-hmm. I think Joel Campbell is starting to work his way into that discussion. Again, Hector Herrera, Raul Jimenez. I don't know if I put Guardado is very good and is very important to Mexico. But are you going to put him on that level at this moment? I mean, PSV did. He did some good things, but he's also capable of doing. I don't know. I guess he's in that mix too. So Campbell, those 3 Mexicans. There's not an American in the discussion right now. And beyond that, I mean, I don't know. You're not going to go. You're probably not ranging outside of those 3 big teams. I don't think anybody else has a player of that quality, whether it's Honduras or Panama or Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago. Nobody like that.
No, they got nice players, but I wouldn't say like I like a Ken Jones from Trinidad and Tobago.
Sure. Yeah,
he's always just been a fun player to analyze.
One note player.
Kamal Lawrence from Jamaica is the other fun player to always analyze. I mean, that's why I think the answer, to be honest, and this is not even complete bias, it has to be Keylor Navas, but again, it's a goalkeeper, and I kind of feel like that's a dirty answer.
Yeah, and look, I mean, obviously, Keylor Navas is a great goalkeeper. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he is. But then that, for me, that opens up a question of how much weight are we giving to who he plays for versus, it's impossible. What I'm saying is it's impossible to analyze a player in a vacuum because that doesn't work. Like Keylor Navas benefits from playing for who he plays for because they're going to dominate 90% of the competition, right? But that doesn't mean he's not a great player.
Well, I mean, you could say that, but then when he was with Levante, he won La Liga.
Yeah, no, of course, and we consider that, and we absolutely have to fold that in. But I mean, again, it's. I'm not saying that Keylor Navas isn't deserving of the title. I'm saying that if a guy ends up whether or not he did anything, Chicharito Hernandez is at Real Madrid. We're talking about he must be one of the best players in CONCACAF. He's at Real Madrid, but that doesn't. I mean, I don't know. He wasn't playing. It's definitely a different. Yeah. Yeah. All right. You got anything else for me, Eddie? It's a good discussion, man.
No, that's pretty much it. I still think, like I said, Chelsea are in a crisis. I think the playoffs will bail them out, so everybody can calm down.
Okay. You go back to the joke, it kind of ruins. I mean, it was so good off the top, but I feel like maybe you got that. You're beating the dead horse a little bit. Eddie in Brooklyn, thanks for the call. Eddie in Brooklyn, not a fan of playoffs. If you couldn't tell from that statement, a guy who wants to identify a champion through the regular season, through a performance over the course of 30, 34, 38 games. Yeah, I get it. I get it, Eddie. I do. All right. That's a good place to wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning. Thank you very much to Ross Dunbar. Again, go follow him on Twitter. At GrossDunbar93. I'm sure he'll be happy to engage you in any discussions about German football or football in general that you might like to have. You can also go follow us on Twitter at Soccer Morning. Make sure you get SiriusXM so you can check out the show every day from 11 to 1 over there. Happy holidays. Buy some stuff. I don't know. See you later. Bye.
Disappear. What I put my heart on every cursive letter. Tell me why the hell no one is here. Tell me what to do to make it all